Hello, this is Lisa Russick
And Donna Murphy.
with the
I'm
podcast where you're all
Stephen.
psychic. Hey, what's up, guys? What's your name? Is your name?
Me?
Yes, you. You were
Oh, Graham
excited. You were
Skidmore. So I guess I
introducing
jumped in.
yourself.
I jumped in prematurely with introducing
We
myself.
love that. We love that. We love the premature everything in this podcast. You just fit right in immediately. You're psychic. Did he not? Because that's like I do this all the time, Graham. I interrupt people constantly by accident. And it's not that I'm meaning to. It's like I get so excited that I'm jumping in.
Well, I think that's much better than not engaging or falling asleep, right?
Yes.
Very
That's much
true.
more exciting. And you know how to put on a great show already, I think. And you'll
Well,
help
let's
me.
hope so. Yeah.
So we do have a question for you right away, Graham. And listeners and watchers, this is a video on Spotify and YouTube. Graham, do you think we're all psychic?
Oh boy. So how about if I answer that and we unpack that a little bit as our starter?
I love it. Let's do it.
All right.
Yep.
Because, it's funny when I knew that this is the first question and I got to tell you, I've spent hours thinking about how to answer this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure. And usually for me, whenever I get stuck on something like that, it means that there's something else is going to come to me, right? That it just hasn't revealed itself yet. And so I've been waiting and pondering on this question anyway. And today it's finally, as I was hanging out with my squirrels and in the park, I finally started to get some insight on how to kind of think about that or answer that question. Because the short answer is like I do believe that psychism, and I teach that psychism is absolutely part of the normal being human, right? Part of the normal human experience. But I don't teach that everybody comes out of the womb psychic. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody got the DNA lottery and knew what it does, and it means that it was a personal choice, right? I think you've had other guests that have kind of talked about Earth as a living and learning adventures, right? As a school.
Most people seem to agree on that one. Yeah.
Good, right? And whether or not, and this is also where I would also ask you, and we'll get in that in a second here. I'll ask you, is kind of to better what falls underneath your umbrella of psychism is that it's that level of connectivity is something that somebody determines before they incarnate, right? So it's a personal choice that somebody makes versus one person having an advantage over another. And I think that that's an unproductive kind of stereotype that comes with it, is that somebody will go, well, wait a second, you're different than me, or you got an advantage over me, or I didn't get those things. So, I wasn't lucky or blessed. No. This is all a personal choice. What you got, this human suit you're rocking, is something you designed, before you came here. And so before I get too much down a rabbit hole, when you think about psychism, I think I shared with you, I use the term spiritual gifts. What do you like? What do you feel like kind of falls underneath that umbrella of psychism, or how do you define psychism?
Well, for me, I guess it's just intuition, basically intuition. And that I can feel the energetic field, but it took a long time to be able to feel it. Seeing spirits and having it validated, they say something to me, and this person says, yes, they've said that to me before. This is validated, through another person several times, many times. It takes a lot. Still not working. Still not stuck in there yet. But that's pretty. That would be mine. What about you, Donna?
So it's evolved a little bit, but it's certainly intuition. Definitely for me falls into that. Falls under the umbrella. But more and more now, I've been getting more interested and more educated in the whole idea of the quantum field or quantum mechanics, and we've talked about this, and probably we'll talk about it again, about the idea of non-local consciousness. And so the idea that basically everything is out there and we're it. So, but when we incarnate, right, when we come into a physical body, we actually damp down much of that experience and much of that knowing and much of that, and just much of that whole connectedness. Otherwise, we couldn't function.
Yeah, we talked about that, Donna.
Body. Yeah, we would just like short circuit, because it's it would be overwhelming. It would be overwhelming. We wouldn't.
Yeah,
be able to
just as an empath in seventh grade and all those senses coming online, like you talked about a minute ago off the podcast, but like that coming back, coming alive for me, with all the senses coming at that age, as regular listeners will know, for me, that was puberty. But having the feeling of not knowing what my feelings were from someone else's was really weird, like not knowing. And listeners and watchers, Graham had said that he had no idea what was happening to him too, when his psychosis kind of came online, like when yours did, right? How old were you when stuff like that started happening for you, or your spiritual gifts?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm glad that you gals broaden it to intuition as opposed to limiting it to just clairs or otherwise. And so that in that respect, using the term of intuition, even trusting a gut instinct, I would say then yes, everybody is psychic, if based on that definition. When you start to get into a little bit more specific of clairs and things like that, then no, not everybody has every single one or every single thing and stuff like that. So to answer, so like you, I had experiences at 12 or 13 in hindsight, recognizing that things were coming online. My sensitivity was picking up, although it didn't go well for me. It turned out to be like sensory overload, and I felt crazy. Ended up in a psych ward because I thought I was going nuts. Right. And, and then just decided so I never really opened anything up. It was only after, I think you've had other listeners talked about this, right? Around 2018, there was a larger kind of awakening out there in the collective.
Everywhere. Yeah.
And so that definitely started to hit me. I left my corporate world, my corporate job, and I was about a year or two after that, I had a friend of mine say to me, like, you're like psychic and like really gifted, right? And I'm like, no, not even close. What are you talking about?
Who said it to you? I'm curious. What friend? How did you know this person?
Yeah, her name is Sunshine. And I worked with her in corporate, and she is one of those people that her whole life she understood herself that way.
Is she the Sunshine who's been on this podcast with the pink hair? Is that
Oh, Sunshine? Absolutely. Yes. You know
Sunshine. Hello. Have you been on podcasts with Sunshine? I don't know. It might have just been Misty who's been on with Sunshine.
Yeah. It wasn't me as a co-host. But,
I love Sunshine. I was like, is pink hair Sunshine? Gosh, I just love her. Yes.
Small world. Yes. She is. Yeah, she's a very important and influential person in my world, and has been extremely helpful in my awakening and understanding and everything. Yeah, so she's had decades of working with her guides and understanding and everything else, and so she has been a great resource for me, because of course my first instinct when I hear about gifts is thinking about to myself, okay, I think about things from a sci-fi perspective or magic stuff that was much more exaggerated or sensationalized versus, let's just say, reality.
Right.
Was for me, right? It was much more. And so I thought about it as, right, like, well, how do I use this to get an advantage in the game of life? Right.
That's interesting you said that. Yeah. I think that's interesting you said that, because not many people would think that way, would they? Not necessarily. They might think this is a damaging thing, like, and not how can I get ahead, but I'm screwed. Because that would have been that was my point of view. I'm screwed. I don't fit in. But I thought that was more important than having an advantage, though.
How was that such a point?
I don't know why. I shouldn't have thought that way.
Well, I think, look, we're all here on our own different paths, and we're all not here to learn the same thing or learn the same ways. It's interesting
to me, though. It's interesting. How did you find it?
So for me, one of the reasons that made it so easy for me to open up to it was that, I was at a bottom. I went from having checking all the right boxes that you're supposed to do, that they teach you to in life and how to be successful. And the more boxes I checked, the more miserable I got. So at the height of my success, I was also the height of my miseries. I'm like, well, this isn't right. There's something missing here. This isn't working for me, right? Yeah, but then,
that can't be the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly right. So then I started trying to understand myself through different lenses. And so I went down the path of understanding myself through the lens of neurodiversity. And so I went through and received a variety of diagnoses and things, and so after, and I guess I'll share this with the listeners, because I think there's a duality here, and I think Helen touched on it as well, which is, so when I went through and got diagnosed at the time with alexithymia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, which is math dyslexia, ADHD, autistic, Erland syndrome, which is these glasses here. And I think there might have been one other, but I was like, all right, that's cool. I'm good with enough. I'm good with enough of those diagnoses, right? Like I
You're
don't
like,
need any more at
so
this
said they're
point.
finding every sensitivity you have and saying it's a problem, basically, is what it
That's
sounds
right.
Yeah,
And
like.
it
that
is
is right. That it's a
yeah,
yeah.
when you don't understand what it is and you just understand, and to your point earlier, Don, about us being connected through the collective, right? When you don't recognize it, where that information is all around us and that we're tapping into it, if you don't know how to, if your human suit doesn't know how to take in all those radio stations and process them, then it is sensory overload. It is overwhelming. When you and let's face it, there's a lot of unhappy and unpleasant emotions that are existing in the world. And if you don't recognize how to separate yours from what your surroundings are, that all that stuff gets on and it wears on you
Oh
and it
yeah.
brings you down. Right? And so going through that, I also then it was like, okay, this is kind of cool. It gave me some new traits, characteristics, words to understand myself through. But then I started to recognize that the more that I aligned with these labels, the more that became my reality. The more that became my reality, the more limiting it became. And then all of a sudden, the more symptomatic that it became. And so it went from, initially a bit of a positive insight about myself into very inhibiting and detrimental, and got to the point where, it affected my motor skills got worse, my ability to put together sentences and be coherent. Everything, became worse for me. So I said, all right, so to be open and receptive to some new ways of looking at my life didn't take much, right? I mean, I literally, I remember falling down on my knees on my in my living room at the time and saying, just, why is this so hard? Please help me to bring some happy into the world. And then I just felt like a little pop go off in my head, and that kind of then kicked off, um, the next chapter of my life, and working with sunshine and understanding myself from, and I use the term spiritually gifted as opposed to psychism or mediumship or whatever, or channeling, only because for me, spiritual gifts kind of encompasses all of that, but it also encompasses courage and wisdom and intelligence, which which is a spiritual gift that I don't think gets enough, gets talked about. And so therefore there's a lot of people that are spiritually gifted but don't think about it because we're potentially thinking about
What
it in
was that
terms of
pop in
just
your
strictly
head?
clairvoyances.
That pop in
Oh,
your
no,
head,
so
was that surrender? Like, that's what it sounds like. You just surrendered then. It's just like, let it happen.
I had a lot of
That's what it
surrendering,
sounds like.
or I call it, beaten, getting more like beaten into submission. I had to learn I chose to learn the hard ways. So yeah, the sweet spiritual surrenders
Nice.
didn't really happen until this last one or two times of changes. But along the way, it was a much more like, getting beaten into submission. But Sunshine, since we talked about her, she's like, oh, that was your pineal gland kind of opening up or whatever. So I didn't worry too much about identifying what it was or wasn't, or labeling it. I just knew that it was just a significant moment for me. And so there definitely was an aspect of surrender at that time, and things opening up. Absolutely.
I'm trying to think. Like, I don't know. For me, I don't think there was a point. Yeah, I still haven't had that point, where I'm like, okay, I surrender. I still don't know, man. I do think we're all psychic and stuff, I mean, I really do. I think we're all psychic. I think we're all intuitive, and we all work with energy, and we all have energy fields. But there's some things that I experience that I'm like, what the frick is going on? Do you guys still have some of that happen to you? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, just some random things that happen in your life that, like, we've talked about on the podcast a lot. The more you work with this stuff, the energy, the weirder your life gets, but the more the weird gets normalized, and then weirder stuff happens, And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm in one of those phases where there's a lot of weirder stuff coming into my life. Like, oh my gosh, this is really weird. This is really weird. This is really weird. But like, if this had all come on to me really fast at, say, those ages of 12 or 13, like it is now, these specific types of things, I wouldn't have known what to do with that, at all. It would have been like I was thrown into the future 5,000 years or something, like, where am I? It's kind of what whose body am I in? Is what it'd be like, I guess. I swear, even my body is different. But now that I guess I have a surrendered kind of thing, because I don't mind talking about it. I'm not like self-conscious about it anymore. Saying I'm psychic. Say, did you ever go through that, Graham? Did you ever have that to face that? Does this tell people? that you're working
It's
with
fun.
now, or that you're an intuitive coach or whatever? How do you express your energy work?
You know, for the most, it's interesting. There's a lot of things I was like, oh yeah, but so first of all, what I would for those that I do talk with or work with, which by the way is kind of only when spirit, has people cross my path. I've been more focused on myself than external, let's call it coaching. And so I needed to unlock my empathy. I needed to gain maturity before I was able to understand my gifts and how to use them. So, to your point, I've spent a lot of my last 5 or 7 years, my job has been healing and understanding myself. So I haven't, worked in a traditional sense. My job was understanding me, understanding my role and responsibility as Earth is going through this change, and what I needed to do and to be to again, fulfill on my part of that. And empathy, and so understanding and unlocking empathy was a huge aspect for me. But yeah,
Yes.
then to your point, I had to laugh about, these days I'm just so used to my environment interacting with me, learning from it. I do a lot of my learnings came from animals and nature and
Yes.
my surroundings, not necessarily individual human teachers. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish what I've accomplished in my transition and had I been constricted to or limited to just human teachers. Much of what I needed to come from nature and animals, and then recognizing that I pick up as well on the energy of animals and things and surroundings. So so just in the last, well, probably in the last year or two, when I run across some people from my past, especially my corporate life, I'll drop little things just to see how it lands about, oh, what have you been up to? Oh yeah, just getting to know myself, this, that, it turns out I'm psychic and da, da, da. And then they'll kind of,
Hey, guess what? I've dropped that bomb
yeah,
at like the class reunion
Yeah.
before, in Alabama. That's fun.
and what's been really cool is that all of the people that have known that I would open up to like this have generally responded with either with oh, are you happier? Are you healthier? All right, and then cool, man.
Really?
You
That's
do
cool.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been, I'm not saying
Well, it
that,
also speaks to the kind of people you bring into your life all your life
yeah.
too. They're accepting of who you are right away, and that's for all your life. That's really hard to find, and you found a lot
That
of them.
said,
It sounds
family
like.
members, not so much. I have
But you have
chosen
to
to not
pick though.
necessarily.
You can't pick those,
Yeah,
Good. Well, as we say we do
so
though. I do believe we do, kind of in the before
that's right.
lifetimes.
That's right. We definitely pick the different people that are going to come near us ahead of time, right? As part of that living and learning adventure. But I've not spoken to them about that, right? And that's just one of those things where, yeah, when I get prodded to do so, I will. And it's a shame because, and in one hand, like it's a shame because a lot of members in my family suffer from, we'll call it mental illness because they don't understand themselves from a different perspective, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
Western or
yes. It never
traditional
ever been
medicine,
offered to them to think that way. My
no.
family I
So
feel
they've
that way
got
about too.
Yeah,
A
so
lot
they've
of
got a
people in
nice
my
pharmaceutical, cabinet that they take, right,
family.
to get by. Which again, I spent my time, taking some of those, antidepressants, ADHD medicines, and all those other kinds of things, Xanax, along the way. So by no means am I knocking that thing, but I am acknowledging that they do they deal with symptoms and a lower quality of life than they need to. But they've all got their journeys, right? And so when
That's
the
true.
opportunities arise and we pop up and we open into those discussions, and cool, I'll be happy to talk to them about those types of things. But I'm not going to be that person who goes and pushes my
Yeah, me
beliefs
neither.
onto somebody without them opening that door themselves, right? So
Mhm.
as you know,
Right,
right?
right.
Spirit has its way, or the universe, source, whatever somebody wants to call it, has a way of bringing together that timing and the opportunity and the conversation opens up when it's supposed to. So I've learned to just let things flow, and those doors will open when they're supposed to.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's so true. And something you said like really stood out to me. With um with the people you could talk to about it, I kind of feel like you're the type they all look to see where you're going, to see where they should go next. I don't know. I just have this feeling you're that person for them So they're kind of like, what's he gonna do now? Do you get that feeling, Donna? Like Graham's like this person, like his friends in his fields and stuff. We're like, what's he gonna do next? Because he doesn't seem like a trailblazer kind type. I don't know, like you do. You're like a modest type of trailblazer, I would say. But you know what I mean, Donna? Do you see that? What I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, I understand what you're saying. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think that anybody who chooses, as Graham did, to take I'll say pretty much a completely different approach, especially after the laundry list of diseases,
Right.
or disorders that you were handed, um, it does take sort of a trailblazer kind of person, right? It takes somebody who's willing to, even if it takes being beaten into submission first, to take a different path to try to understand and assimilate and integrate and put a whole different spin, a whole different perspective on the experience, what those things have caused you to experience is really it's an innovator or a trailblazer approach. Now, the people that you've talked to that are supportive may or may not take that path. First of all, they may not have the same challenges. If they do, they still might choose a different path. But the fact that they're now aware of that's in their consciousness, I think
Yeah.
that alone is it opens something, it expands something that maybe wouldn't otherwise be there. And so, yeah, in that respect, I think that can be enormously helpful, even if it really does seem like it's maybe a small thing, or that you don't wind up with, thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. You still open something for someone that wasn't open before or might not have opened before any
Yeah.
other way.
And to me, the
That's
advantage of opening any of this stuff up is to be happier. Is that what you find, Graham?
Mhm.
To make other people happier while you're at it, because that makes me feel even happier. You know? What do you
it's
think?
it's it's so funny. Well, the irony, I don't know if that's the right, if that's the appropriate term, of my comments a moment ago about spirit finds a way to open up conversations or doors and they're supposed to, and then us immediately going into this one. That is
Yeah.
not lost. That synchronicity is not lost on me at the moment. So it's funny you said that, because again, obviously I'm a 180-degree different person than what I was in my corporate life. So what people knew was, boy, he's got a good heart, but there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of hubris. And so I was absolutely a trailblazer. I always have beat to my own drum. And so when people started to see me, become, happier, more at peace, or even get to know myself better, people were curious, because I was a very quirky individual, right? Very different. And so, to your point, there were people that related to me and saw different things. And it was kind of like, oh, well, Graham can be different, but still then achieve or be successful and doesn't look like
Mhm.
everybody else on the corporate ladder. And so there were people that took comfort in that, and, in kind of having representation that way, right? But
Yeah.
then when I would talk about the neurodiversity or being diagnosed as autistic, whatever, then people were like, "Whoa, all right, well, let's back up the bus here. I'm happy to not to
Right.
align with you, right? As quirky, I'm happy to align with you as being your own drum. But once you start to take on the label of a disorder or otherwise, well, that's when we
Mhm.
got to back up the bus. And that was the same. Even doctors that I had would, to your
Yeah.
point, would
Oh, yeah,
align with me and feel
definitely.
like. But then the minute I said that, they'd be like, whoa, wait a second here, right? I don't know about all that. Maybe it's something different. Are you sure about that? Did you get a second opinion, right? Because then all of a sudden it wasn't so comfortable for them to align with me anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was a very interesting part of my transition and learning process and becoming more self-aware.
Yeah, you have to stand up
Along
against
the way.
that ignorance who is dressed up as knowledge.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like the
there's nothing to
biggest
tell.
ignorance of like our country and our culture is the healthcare system. I think one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That we're all supposed to think the same and be the same. I mean, if that's the
Yes,
case, how does anything
exactly.
change or evolve?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And
If
so,
someone's suffering from one of these things, you get to the root of what it is. You don't just throw pills at them and tell them to go home and feel better in 6 very serious weeks. You know,
yeah,
in my opinion.
I agree. Look, if
press,
that
for
was the
example.
case, you'd see a lot. You'd see if that was the right answer, you'd see a society of a lot of much more happy and healthy
Right.
people, and you don't,
Yeah,
No.
right?
the proof, to be very cliche, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
If
That's
that
right.
were true for most people, if that were the course of action that led to the desired result, yeah, you'd have a lot happier, healthier
And
people.
treated
And
people.
what,
They're
yeah,
happy with
and
their treatment. They keep taking it.
right, they wouldn't want to go off their meds. They wouldn't want, to do
If they can,
something different than what they're doing.
They
right.
wouldn't keep
Um,
seeking different answers through spiritual or otherwise, right? They
yeah,
would feel like,
yeah,
right? They'd found that inner peace, and they'd be
yeah,
happy and in love with who they see in the mirror. And
Yes.
unless you're loving who you're seeing in the mirror, there's something missing.
yeah. There's
Yes.
work that still needs to be done. Yeah, there's
Most
work
people
or
don't ever see
exploration or
that.
something. Yeah,
Yeah. And I don't think
yeah.
most people ever look in the mirror and see that ever. I don't know anybody I know in my life anyway. Maybe Donna has, and I guess Graham, you have looked in the mirror in my personal life. I would say, looked in the mirror and really thought, I like who I am. Not maybe who can't even get to the I love myself. It's a hard thing to do, but I mean, I can do it flippantly, but I still couldn't like sit down and have a hard sit down with myself and say, I love you. I don't think I could, It's still a little uncomfortable. Don't know why. I don't know why. But
You know,
it's not an ego, it's not humility. It's like I don't know if it's true or not, or is it? I'm trying to work towards that. Am I there? Am I willing to say I'm there? You know.
well, look, I mean, how would I say? Only so in full disclosure, like I think I talked to earlier, my whole job has been to know myself and to be able to build bridges through firsthand experience here as Earth's going through its evolution. And so, only because I've spent the last 5 to 6 years solely focused on that being my barometer of success is do I love the person that I see in the mirror? And part of learning, part of Earth's intelligent design is maintaining love through adversity, right? And so, and when you don't understand that adversity, and when we're not taught how to understand that, and if we ignore, our guidance systems, well, then we find ourselves in a lot of challenges that manifest as trauma, pain, guilt, and shame. And until we can take those and have gratitude and grace for ourselves and give ourselves credit for the learning that we went through, as opposed to thinking that we were supposed to have avoided those things, that we played the game wrong, and so we dealt with that, as opposed to going through those experiences for learning, right? It's really hard to do that. And so I had to spend a lot of time going through those things, right? Like, so it would be very easy for me to, and this is part of my learning, transition and experience was going from, oh my God, all these things are wrong with me. Oh my God, right? Like I'm a walking disaster. And instead recognizing that no, all of these things were by design. I chose to have these attributes, traits, characteristics, so that I could provide a different perspective to people as part of healing in this chapter of life. And
Yeah.
so, right. And so I actually so now instead of looking at and saying, okay, wow, how screwed up am I? Instead, I look at myself as saying, wow, that's pretty cool that you were willing to walk in those and take on those challenges for the sake of being of service to others in the future.
Right. That's nice
And
of
that's
you
a
to do
much,
that.
and that's a
Mhm.
much, yeah, and that was a much healthier approach. And again, it's
Mhm.
easy to say that, right? I'm making it sound really simple, but I think anybody who's gone through
But
this
aren't you a
work,
lot
there's
happier
nothing
feeling that
simple
way
about
about yourself,
it.
right? But aren't you a
Yeah,
lot happier thinking that way about yourself? And I suck because
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm autistic for today. Or for years I've been autistic and I didn't know it, and now I'm screwed for life. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's kind of it does feel when you get a big diagnosis like that. I've had the schizophrenia diagnosis. I don't take antipsychotics anymore, but I haven't for years. I don't think I need them. At that time, I
And that's
needed
where,
to
like, I don't align with
separate.
those labels, but
Well, I needed
Mhm.
something then at that time in my life because I couldn't
oh yeah.
separate the psychic impressions from the psychotic ones. And then with the medications, I could, and then I learned how to without them. So,
And that's that. But what you just talked about is I wish more people understood that it's not an all or nothing path, right? It's a
Mhm.
phased
it's
approach,
not. It's everyone's
right?
different. Yeah.
Yeah, some like for me, I'm a rip the band-aid off, right? Like, so when I was getting off my antidepressant, I didn't take a gradual approach. I just cut it off, and it's like, all right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But again,
Yeah.
I could do that because I didn't have to go to work.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
was able to be alone in my house by myself. Right. So so I had my environment was set up for me to do the crash courses. The average person, like, no, you're not going to do that. You need to, understand how your mind's going to react to these things and understand how your emotions are and make sure that it's not overload. And then is
And how are other people going to handle you changing like that so fast?
That's right.
Because it's different.
That's right. Right. And then giving yourself grace to go through that process, whether it takes a month, a year, or 10 years, is secondary. What's important is getting comfortable in our own skin and becoming who we want to be on the other side of it. Right. I mean, like we talked about, it's not a one size fits all journey. It's not a one size fits all approach. It's not a one size fits all way of being human. We all got to figure that out for ourselves. And the only way we're going to figure it out is to, through that experiential process.
Right. You're right.
Anyway,
and
so I just, yeah.
That's the truth. And Gandalf, my cat here, totally agrees with you, don't you, Gandalf? He came up just when you were talking. He's got a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah, he's like, I got to get in on this. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, but that living and learning and expecting the phased approach and recognizing that what in traditional or Western approach, it's something we get taught that adversity only occurs when you make mistakes. As opposed to, and I think, but if we all step back and think about what did we learn from when things were perfect and without any hiccups compared to what we learned, when adversity or challenges arose.
Right.
And as much as we don't like to, as much as we'd love to always, gosh, it'd be so nice if everything goes planned. Well, let's think about what we wouldn't be if our life was really that way. Right. Yeah.
So true. And I have beginner's luck. I swear to God, I have beginner's luck. Every time I do something the first time, I do it perfectly. And I can never do it like that until I practice for years and years and years and years again. And whenever I decide to try, if I tried golf for the first time, I almost got a hole in one going uphill,
Wow.
rolled like this close to the hole and like my first hit, but I could never get it off, out of the woods. After that, literally out of the woods,
Well, and I think too, what Graham just spoke to, what occurs to me is that a lot of that has to do with the illusion of control.
Yeah.
So the idea that things would be better if we didn't have adversity, but that having adversity is some fault of ours. In other words, if we had just done differently, better, fill in the blank with the
if we decide to think that way, right?
Then there would have been then there would not have been that adversity. And I just basically don't think that's true, because I don't think that it's always our doing or our direct doing, and that we don't have direct control over a lot of things that occur. I mean, for one thing, we're on a planet with, billions of other people. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, right?
That's right.
Other people's
we have
actions,
control over our reactions to things, though.
Right. That we have control over. What we do about what happens and what approach we take and what perspective we want to take, that we absolutely, I do feel we have agency and control. But we have the illusion that we control a lot more things, I think, than we actually do. And I think that's what sets up the dynamic that if we meet adversity or we fail, of course, it's our failing, right? There was something we either should have done and didn't, or there was something we did do that we shouldn't. And I think that that's not necessarily the case at all. But dealing with the curveballs and the out of left field stuff is where we grow, is where we learn. But it's not because we necessarily screwed up, and that's why we're finding these challenges.
Oh, so, okay. So the debate here is the reasons challenges come is because we haven't basically surrendered yet. Is that kind of what
we haven't learned what we needed to learn?
Differences. Okay.
Yeah, it could be surrender. It could be learning, which, surrendering is an aspect of learning. So I would take it a step further and say, going back to this all being psychic and the adversity, there's a lot of trauma that occurs that manifests itself as different ailments because people ignored their psychism. People ignored their intuition. People ignored their gut. Right. And it's only so that's one of the things that when I do help people that are interested in healing, with my methods that we go through is, let's back up the bus here and let's get rid of this guilt or shame or thinking that you should have avoided that horrible situation. And now let's look back and recognize how your human suit was telling you to avoid it, but you turned it off. You didn't listen. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, that starts to help people unlock and open up their gifts and abilities. But then it also, usually when it occurs as well, then the other aspect is now, we've got all this life ahead of us to use our gifts. And it's like, okay, and like I'll use a relationship situation, right? Because that's one that we can, most people can relate to, is the ignoring of our intuition when our intuition is telling us to get out of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and we stay in it. And then and as a result, we encounter more, pain and trauma. And so it's very easy to spend a lot of time kicking ourselves, in the butt and sitting and keeping those secrets to ourselves that we may not want to, admit to others. But the reality is, I tell people, think about it this way. In order for you to learn your lessons that you wanted to learn during this incarnation, if you hadn't chose to learn at that point, what else would it have taken?
Mm-hmm.
How much more severe would it have had to have been for you to
Mm-hmm.
start listening and trusting your intuition, your guidance? So yes, on one hand, you can sit there and kick yourself in the butt and say, why didn't I listen to my intuition earlier? Well, because that's what you needed to do to learn. That's what you needed to experience. Now let's take on the flip side. I would say, wow, now that you've recognized you've got this awesome gift and ability that like a truth teller or a warning system inside of you, how much more life do you have, and how much more enjoyable can the rest of your life be now that you can lean into this gift and ability, right? And let's focus on that, right? That's part of the reclamation process and restoration that I talk about or teach, is the personal growth, the reclamation of the genuine and authentic self, and then the restoration of the connection with the higher self, right? Mm-hmm. And all of those, and and we can't connect to our higher self and be our genuine and authentic selves if we're denying who we are, if we're denying our feels, if we're denying our gifts, if we're denying how our interactions and our experiences and our environment is talking to us, right? If we're ignoring the life lessons that are being taught to us. And so I've had people say, wait a second, Graham, you're telling me I'm destined to have crappy things happen to me? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. There's a different, but if you do recognize that, if you look back, if we want to be really honest, if we really want to look in the mirror and accept accountability for things, we can look back and say, okay, I was warned earlier. I had an easier path. Mm-hmm. My decisions chose me, take the harder path. And then there's other people where, like you mentioned, but I can't remember if we were recording or not, but you talked about one of your guests who talked about, when he was at the age of 5 and he leaned into his gifts, and then he was supported by his family. Right. Yeah. And so, right. So if we're brought up in an environment that teaches us how to be comfortable in our own skin and that our reality is our reality, even though it may not be the same reality that others experience, well, then we can have our learning without the pain and the trauma, right? A lot of times that pain and trauma comes when, we don't believe our reality, or when we believe somebody else's reality over our own, because it's different than.
I would love to talk about reality like that, because reality is one of my favorite topics as far as perspective. It has to be from your own perspective, right? Everyone unique perspective. Yeah. We're all living together, though. Are you real? Are you guys real? So you have to go there too eventually. But oh, go ahead.
Well, also too, I didn't want to imply, I just didn't want to imply that earlier that I don't think that choice plays a big part in what happens to us. And as you spoke to, if you're ignoring something that maybe you shouldn't be ignoring, and you decide to either override it or not tell the truth to yourself, that can get you in deeper into an unpleasant or painful or even traumatic situation. So no, I'm a big believer in choice, and trust me, I am no stranger to bad decisions.
Well, anybody else who walked the spiritual path, we've been there, done that.
Poor judgment, or poor judgment, exercising poor judgment. But the idea that I guess it goes from, is it going to be blame, shame, inadequacy, Or are we going to take ownership and responsibility, but understand the value then of that experience and that lesson, so that we, first of all, don't have to keep repeating it? That would be great. And then to take that and again, it's a form of alchemy, right?
That's exactly right.
You're transforming pain, trauma, whatever, into gold, into really something of very high, precious value.
And in today's environment, where with the earth going through an evolution and there being so much healing that needs to occur, there are many, many people that incarnated and chose to take challenging paths for the sake of helping others, right? As part of their acts of service. And so I think people understanding that is just so important, especially people listening, because most likely, they've experienced this in one capacity or another. And to Lisa, to your point, I actually have got a lot of strong opinions about the words perspective versus reality, because I think when people say, "Oh, that's your perspective," I'm being a little general here, but that to me is usually when somebody is doing that to be dismissive of another.
Oh, being semantics. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm like literally saying that's a cool conversation to have.
Yeah, well, I'm saying no, I know you're being dismissive, but like others, right? But I say, look, no, we all have our own reality, because very rarely, like, their perspective tends to imply that there's this one truth.
Oh, I was getting the opposite. I was thinking the opposite. Perspective would be that we each have our own truth. And the other way would be that we all have the same truth. I took that totally separately. I meant it totally differently, like the opposite. It's weird. Because when I think of a perspective, it's like no one has that perspective but mine. No one has my perspective but me. And it's because everything that's happened to me, everything that's in my body biologically, everything that's in my mind, in my spirit, everything. And then, like, if I am like feeling like connected to everybody else, to me, that's more of a like spiritual aspect, like connected to the whole. That's where we're going. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to get as unique as possible so we can contribute to the whole of whatever whole is what it feels like to me. Like we've got a goal somewhere. We're not just doing this for no reason. Right. But I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll give you an example. So, like, somebody, depending on, somebody may say, well, the reality is you shouldn't be dressing like that and going to work. Okay, well, that's really, so to me, I would say that's more of somebody's perspective versus their reality, because based on what generation you come from.
Yeah, I would say that's their perspective too. Than their reality. Right? Well, that is their reality too, though. They really think that's bad. Well,
that's
trying
my
to
point.
Insult you is what they're doing.
That's right. And so that's what makes. It's like, no, look, it's based on someone's, ethnicity, culture, age, all their biases, all their experience. That's all going to shape someone's reality of how they, and so that is real. So
like, what's correct. Yeah.
That's right.
Nobody has the same reality really either. They have
that's my whole point. None of us have the same reality. And the faster and the more that everybody gave credibility and credit and respect and honor that we're all having that, then the easier it is for us all to start getting along. Yeah, but when we all think that we're supposed to be having when we think we're all supposed to be thinking the same way, which typically means executive white guy, whatever that perspective is, then that we're all supposed to default to. And anybody who doesn't see it that way is crazy or doesn't understand or doesn't get it or whatever else, right? That's what causes a lot of pain and trauma and anger and frustration.
It does in our culture. It really does. Yeah. And I mean, all around the world, it's like that too, but especially I don't know those other places really personally. But I know in this country where I've been, it's always influenced like that. It is the white man everyone should be, but then everyone who has the power, who has the advantage. The white man has the advantage, and they haven't not had it ever that I've known.
Yeah, look, I benefited from that. Let me tell you, I benefited a lot from this. That's why I call it out, because I'll be very open. My life was I was very, very fortunate, very lucky to, in that respect. And I didn't realize just how much until I walked into a different world that wasn't built for me so much anymore. And I found myself on the outside looking in versus thinking that, versus having the world revolve around me and not even realizing it, right? I was at the blissful ignorance
Right, right.
And recognizing that, look, we don't all start with the same equal opportunities. We don't start with
No,
having the
we do
same access to
not.
things, and we can't. It's not just about hard work. That's a huge fallacy.
Like you said, if only people could realize that we all have different realities and respect it and be cool with it, everybody say, "Hey, yeah, I like your reality. I don't like your reality, but I'm cool with something like that."
Right, like you do
Discuss your
you, just don't
realities,
try to push it on me.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Don't make me
I
believe
think
your
as long I
reality.
think if there's acceptance without an expectation of conformity, we can do fine.
Yeah,
The
yeah. So
fact that
without
I
an
might not
expectation of
like someone
conformity,
else's
exactly.
Yeah, the fact that I might not like someone else's reality or maybe even grasp or understand someone else's reality isn't as important as not trying to then impose on them what I think then is the right one or the true one or the conforming one so that we can all,
The only
I've
times I think
suffered.
I've ever really felt like
so
I
that we can all
related,
like fall into line.
yeah, like the only times I ever felt like I really connected to another person, it would be energetically or romantically love, or even like a family member love,
Mhm.
or a friendship love, but through love or through that, it's hard to explain. But I feel like those are the only two times I would have felt that way, or those experiences in life. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
getting
I mean,
really tired, guys. Graham was calling me out in that email, y'all. He said, should we do this schedule earlier? And I'm like, no, I can make it. I can make it. And I did drink my coffee. I got in here and I'm starting to fade, guys. I'm literally like, I'll say a sentence and I had a good point, and there's no good points tonight. I'm hitting left and right.
that's all good. Let us carry you then. We're already here. We're already invested in. So let us Donna and I kind of walk us through the finish line. And
Let's
Donna,
get
to
to
your
the
point, I
finish
can
line, Graham. Tell us where we can find
yeah.
you. You're
Okay, well, let
fun.
me
I
make
like
one
you.
last point before I do that,
Make your point.
which
I'd love
is
it.
to the and the whole conformity thing is, and talking about pain and trauma. A lot of the pain and trauma that I have encountered in life came at the end of the sentences that started with, "I'm only trying to help. I
Yeah.
just want you to avoid this." And I can't
Or the
tell
sentence is
you.
that I don't mean to be something, but
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's what comes after the but.
That's
you
right.
are meaning to
So
do that. Exactly what you're meaning to do. Yeah.
exactly right. No, what you're trying to do is to tell me how to live what you believe my life should be versus helping
Exactly.
me to live my own life and to become comfortable living my life and be comfortable with me. Right.
Right. And I think
And
that's a
so,
big thing. And
yeah.
I think you're from our generation. John, you're three of us. We're all probably around in the same generation. And I'm thinking like the generation older than ours, they had structure that they had to stick by. Otherwise, their times didn't run. Their cities didn't run if they didn't get to their industries on time, get them going by the clock, getting everything clockwork. Now that we don't have the industrial, this industrial is kind of dead now. We have like computers taking over everything. Time isn't that big of a deal. What time we get there isn't that big of a deal anywhere, unless we're flying planes and stuff like that, which is when it was important. Do you see like what I'm getting at is as like that was only geez, that wasn't even 200 years ago. We didn't have any of it, you know?
Mhm.
Was weird, innovation transportation to even worry about a clock. So, I mean, it's just interesting that we even measured time at any point. Um, Except that we had to figure out, like, I guess, when to meet each other, if we're going to meet somewhere for a hot date. I don't
Well, I think
know.
back in the day, it was a lot easier to live and let live when we operated off of the solar clock versus the digital clock, right? Once the
Right.
digital clock
Yeah,
in conformity and changed things, and
it
for some
did.
made some people's lives easier and then made some other people's lives
But
much
like
more
the
challenging.
people above us running the country were used to that kind of industrial mentality. You get things done. You do it this way. We do it my way. We do it any other one else's way. Is my way. Everyone says that though, and then they don't let the younger ones come up because of we don't know it yet because we're too young at 50.
Right.
Yeah, that's my opinion anyway. It has nothing to do with psychic. That's just my political opinion, and why isn't our country happier? You know, they won't let us have a say. 'Cause our generation, I mean, I love our generation. I think our generation did a lot of great things, and we still could. I think we will. I don't think it's going to change. I think we've still got a lot of time, right, guys out there, listeners, watchers. Graham, will you tell us where we can find you on the interwebs?
So yeah, so if you've enjoyed my kind of take on life a little bit, then I would say please check out my video series. I didn't come with an owner's manual on YouTube that focuses on and where I go into detail on understanding Earth's intelligent design and yourself as a being of consciousness and how to navigate it to and then I have a podcast also there on YouTube, the same page called Understanding the Science of You, which provides people going through real life examples of the concepts and things like that I share in the Owner's Manual series. Cool. And then part of, I talked about my roles and responsibilities here. And so one of my roles and responsibilities is, or going through its challenges, is creating a human-centric society, for lack of a better description. And so if that sounds like of interest, what we're talking about here, and living this way and having the infrastructure and systems that support, understanding yourself as a human with more than the traditional five senses, then check me out at EnGen Solutions, ENGEN Solutions.com, and see if that's something you want to be a part of as either as a member, as a practitioner, as a supporter, right? I mean, this whole next evolution is about, it takes a village. So, we can use all the help we can get.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Graham.
Yeah.
And
so thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been awesome. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Everclear. Everclear is an advice app and website where you can get advice from psychics and empaths. So you can get the clarity you need to create the life you deserve. And Donna is Maria M. Maria M. on Everclear as an advisor. And I am Lisa Russick as an advisor on Everclear. And I think it's Everclear advice app on the app stores, and it's just everclear.com on the internet. And we love them. They're very cool. So any advisor on there will make you happy. I swear it. I swear it. I'm so tired, guys. I don't know how to do this anymore. I forgot. I've only done it 400 times.
I'm going to help you to wrap this up, Lisa. Yes, I love your listeners and your watchers.
I will. Thank you. I love my listeners and watchers. You love our listeners and watchers, though. Graham.
I love our listeners and watchers.
I do. I love them. I love everybody.
And this has been absolutely fascinating. Graham, it's been such a great pleasure to meet you, and really stimulating and interesting conversation. And I'm definitely going to check out more on your website. But this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Debate. Ooh, it was exciting.
It was.
Thank you, listeners and watchers. I love you. Peace out.
Take care.
Take care.
Good night.